If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. As you're trying to come to terms with this phenomenon that we refer to as narcissism, it can be natural for you to ask the question, is narcissism a learned pattern, or is it just something that's fixed on the inside of an individual? Now, sure enough, there are some individuals that are so far down on the spectrum of narcissism, the malignant narcissists in particular, that it's a pretty easy answer. They're just hardwired to be that way. And then there's some individuals who are on the other end of the spectrum. They're just so naturally empathetic and tender and all. They're hardwired to be that way. But then you ask, well, what about all those people in the middle? Well, actually, research does show that personality is very much linked to your genetic predispositions. There are natural inclinations that each of us has that we're just always going to have. It's just always been there and it always will. As an example, some individuals are natural born leaders. Some individuals are natural born followers. Some are naturally extroverted. Others are naturally introverted. Some are naturally compliant. Some are naturally stubborn. Some people have good impulse control and they're calm and steady. It's just the way they are. And some, they can be just very erratic in the way that they manage their emotions. Some have an easy predisposition toward empathy. Others have no curiosity at all about other individuals. And much of that is just part of their inborn nature. And I know that there can be a lot of emotion that surrounds that question, is this person in front of me a narcissist, and did I have something to do with it? You know, particularly if it's somebody that's on the inside of your own family. And it's important for you to realize that each of us has a certain predisposition that we're born with, and this is based on sibling studies and twin studies and beyond. And as a result, it does tell us that you're not responsible for everything about another individual's personality. And by the way, narcissists are famous for, if they have a flaw in their personality, for finding someone that they can blame. And sometimes it's just like, you know what, there's just something that you were born with. You need to come to terms with that. Now, if we could put a percentage on it, we would say roughly 50% of your personality is inborn. It's fixed. It's that way. Actually, studies will say around 40 to 60%. So I take it in the middle and I say about 50%. Now, having said that, there are some environmental influences that we want to watch for, and those environmental influences are very broad. When I'm looking at the people and I'm wondering what might have influenced them to go in the direction of narcissism, one of the places, obviously, as a therapist that I would begin is I would want to talk about things inside the family of origin, although let's underscore that's not the sum total of that either. But as part of the nurture side of narcissism, there are some things inside the family of origin that I'm going to want to watch for that tells me, how they were impacted. For example, how strongly was the control characteristic a part of the family? A lot of harsh agendas or fixed ways that things had to go. How much indulgence did that young person have? How much negligence might they have had inside their the family circle? Was there a presence? Was there an absence of tenderness? And how was that played out? Was that individual a scapegoat? Was that individual the golden child? Was that individual exposed to judgment and shame and guilt induction? Or did they have the capacity to work things out in a fair-minded kind of way? Was that individual growing up inside that family of origin exposed to excessive criticism or perhaps overly praised? Were there erratic messages related to the topics of love or acceptance or their personal worth? Was there an atmosphere inside the home of openness? Or was there a closed nature? Were there siblings that took over and kind of ran the family? What about the presence of grandparents? And then what about unusual circumstances inside the family? For example, I literally knew someone whose younger sister, when he was about 12, was struck by lightning, and she wound up having gross difficulties because of that. And then the family gave much attention to her, and he felt neglected. I mean, we can have some really unusual situations like that. To say nothing, was that person exposed to abuse or neglect or some sort of traumatic kind of experience? And so there are many of those kinds of nurture elements that can come into play that might have a strong handle or a strong influence on whether a person goes towards the direction of narcissism. Now, like I say, your personality can be fixed as you come into the world, but family of origin issues like that can determine if you're going to go way far down the direction towards more narcissism, or if you have the healthier versions of those things that I just mentioned, it might that your fixed inclination might be softened some. So that's going to be a huge factor. Now, in addition to genetics and family of origin, we also want to look at the broader sociological influences that a person has had. As a simple illustration, what kind of schools did that person go to? Or what kind of exposures did they have to competition themes? Because we know that narcissists can be highly competitive. Was this individual on the low end of competitions to where they thought of themselves as being a loser, and so they wound up having to compensate for it? Were they so intent on being the winner that they developed a I'll take people down kind of a mindset, whether it's in athletics or academics, or did they have a competitive mindset with respect to things like their looks or their socioeconomic status, the accumulation of material gain? It could be that a person grew up with a real strong religious structure that may not have served them well, or they may have been in organizations, or their parents may have been involved with other adults who wound up not having a good influence on them. So we have more of the sociological, broader world out there that can certainly determine if they're going to go further or not as far in the direction of narcissism. And then we can even take it beyond that. And we can say that not only are we going to look at the sociological, but we can also look at the broader cultural experiences that a person grew up in to determine how they might be inclined toward narcissism. As an example, if a person is born in Yemen, and that's where they've lived all their life, they're going to have a different cultural experience as opposed to somebody who was born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa, or Perth, Australia. And the different cultural influences and those kinds of experiences that come along with that can certainly give some rise in either direction to where a person is narcissistically. In addition, we can also look at some subcultural kinds of influences. For example, ethnicity, or the socioeconomic status that a person grew up in, and the advantages and disadvantages that might have gone along with that. And we can also look at things like social media and what's going on around a person in that regard. In today's modern age, we can say that there's a lot going on there that can actually feed narcissism. Although going way back, there could also have been some social elements that are a part of the culture that may have influenced a person. For example, if somebody grew up in a subculture that had a lot of drug influence, and some grew up in a subculture that had a huge influence on wealth and things like that. I mean, there's so many different kinds of things. Now, as I look at these various ingredients, I remind myself that an individual's personality is fixed in many ways, And so there may be some individuals that are just going to have a greater inclination toward narcissism because of what they bring to the equation from day one. But then as we look at these family and then cultural and societal kinds of influences, the things that I watch for most that tells me if an individual is going to develop narcissism is to watch and see how well love was established, feeling safe was established, having trust was established. When those kind of ingredients are strong, then narcissism tends not to be strong. When those kind of ingredients are weak, then narcissism tends to increase. And then in addition, when I look at the broader societal elements, I watch for how much groupthink was fed into that young person as they were growing up and developing, and if they had kind of an inclusive versus exclusive kind of experience with other individuals. So you can see that when we talk about narcissism and we ask, well, is it a learned experience or is it something that a person has just from day one? The answer is both. But it does matter as you examine all of these different kinds of issues that I'm bringing up in a very quick and cursory kind of way. It does matter when we begin asking who's responsible for what. Now, each one of us needs to ask, what are some of my inborn inclinations? And if I have some tendencies that I can see on the inside of my personality, and by the way, there are temperament analysis tests, and right now the Enneagram is very popular, the Myers-Briggs. If you have certain inclinations, you can examine those and ask, inside my personality style or temperament type, what are my strengths, my weaknesses? But then in addition, as you look at other individuals, and if they're trying to blame you for who they are, it's like, wait a minute, I'm responsible for me, but you're responsible for you. And so there's a real sense of balance that we want to maintain as we ask that question, is narcissism learned? The bottom line is this. I'm hoping that as you examine yourself, you can take a look at what your natural inclinations might be, and you can say, I'm going to take what was given to me, and I'm going to make the most of it. And then if you look at those other individuals who have a strong narcissistic bent, and it's clear that they have not taken that same kind of a mindset, I'm hoping you can remind yourself what they do with their life is not something that I have to take responsibility for. So I'm hoping that today's discussion gives you a broad overview of what you're dealing with. And knowledge is power and insight is power. And as you have a knowledge and an understanding of what you're dealing with, then it allows you to have proper boundaries and a proper sense of where responsibilities do lie and where they do not lie. And act according to your responsibilities without having to take responsibility for where other people go in their personal life. Okay? I hope that videos such as this can give you some good awareness and some good insight. If you've not already done so, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button. Gus and I will keep more videos coming in your direction. If you have a need to unpack this with a therapist, and I know many of you do, I'm so pleased to be sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. It's an online therapy service, and we have a link below. And if you have a need for something like that, I would encourage you to go through our link and then find out, what the team there at BetterHelp.com can do to help you and assist you in that regard. Also, I have my therapeutic courses that have multiple videos and written materials and questions that guide you. Ready, Set, Connect about having healthy connection skills. This is me about establishing boundaries, Free to Be about finding yourself despite the controllers in your life. And then we have my new podcast. We have books and other resources. Thank you for letting me be a part of your journey with you. So narcissism has a learned element, but it also has very much a fixed element. And it's important for you to recognize that. And as you're able to gauge where other individuals are and frankly where you're coming from, then I'm hoping it positions you to be objective. And then in your objectivity, you can commit to DRC yourself, dignity, respect, and civility. And in doing so, I'm hoping you can find your way towards peace.